Today we're going to be talking about PostHog versus Google Analytics, comparing 6 different key aspects that I've written down over here, and I'll read to you exactly how they're written. Users, how do we identify users within Google Analytics and PostHog? Data flowing, how do we get data in and get data out of both PostHog and Google Analytics? How do we do reporting, right? What's built into the platform and what is possible outside of the platform? Again, 2 very helpful situations. We then have troubleshooting. How do you troubleshoot when something is wrong? How good are both platforms at updating their documentation for those high-level users? Cost. What is it going to cost you for both Google Analytics and PostHog? Should you have both? How do you compare those costs? Lastly, customization. What type of customizations can you do in both platforms without getting the data outside of that or with the data outside of it? Both have very unique methods of doing that, and I'm going to dive into them right now and show you how to do it. So first off, let's talk about users. What is a user? How to identify a user, and how do you handle users down the line? The first thing I want to show you is in PostHog. If you go into this thing called people, there's a really cool feature if you can run into the actual persons here, and I'm going to look for myself for JJ at Vision Labs. What we're going to do is we're going to see actually your email address. Once you become a actual lead, you will see your email show up, and that will be the user identified. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for myself inside of our traffic. So here you can see the person profile on the left and the ID of that person on the right, and when they were first seen. Here we have a bunch of different tests that I was running for myself. So I'm just going to hop into one of these. What's really, really cool is that once you submit a form or you become identified, you can identify a person, and that person is tied to an email address. So you get these 2 different things of you get an ID of a user ID that is up here at the top, and then we also get to see their email, so associated with that. And over time, you'll have multiple events. You'll have different types of traffic that are all coming in to this person identity. It's really nice because you can see all the events that I had in the last 24 hours. Maybe there are none because this email address has not been active. 180 days, we can see here. Here are all the different events that were triggered across multiple sessions, multiple times, etc. So that is how it works. What you need to do in order to enable this is you just hop into your settings, and then down here where you have your actual implementation, you can change this from person profiles to identified only. That will create a person profile, an identity for only when you have an email address, or you can change it to always, which will create a person profile for all anonymous users, and once you have an email, it will join them together. It's pretty awesome. So Google Analytics, let's talk about that. Google Analytics, how does it handle users? You have something called a user ID. The easiest way to look at this is the user ID is set, but it has to be anonymous. Google Analytics, everything must be anonymous. So if we go in here and create a blank report, I will show you very fast. You can hop into dimensions, and here you can type in ID. And what you'll see is the actual, all these different things that come in as far as IDs, item list IDs, everything along those lines. But if you type in user, signed in with user ID is when you push that actual user ID. And let me show you this because we actually don't, I don't know if we actually have this, and I'll just put in sessions for a metric just so we have, and then we'll also have users. And what you need to do is add these, and we'll see here. So here you can see the ones that were not set, and then we have 100 that were signed in with the user ID. So if you click on these, we're going to look at these, right click, and then you can set view users, right? So now we have all of these different people. We've gone one level deeper, so we have a comparison segment here. And then what you'll see is that you'll actually see the pseudo user ID or client ID. So here, this is the ID that should line up with BigQuery. If you click on it, you'll have that user profile. Similar to PostHog, where you have all of the events, you just have to use a user ID. It's also very difficult to get data into this, but that'll be just point number 2. But very similar as far as having a user ID and having an email address. But here we just can use this pseudo user ID, and we can have an ID that we write if we want to the platform. Hey, quick interruption to show you exactly what we can do. Go to visionlabs.com/contact. Let us know you are wanting PostHog implemented. We have a dedicated service for implementing PostHog, running it in parallel to Google Analytics so that you can see the benefits while our team works with you to get the most out of your data. That brings us to point number 2, is the data flow, the data ingestion and output of PostHog and Google Analytics. Let's talk first about Google Analytics. First off, you have to use measurement protocol if you want to send data in. Measurement protocol is one of these things that it never fully works. There are so many different ways that this cannot work that it really causes problems down the line. You can, in theory, send data in via measurement protocol, but it is so complex, so convoluted that not many people do it. It's very difficult. So that's about getting data in. Otherwise, as far as a browser, it's similar to everything else where you just put a script on the page. It integrates well into Google Tag Manager, so you can just send events to that G tag, you're off to the races, and Bob is your uncle. Let's now hop into PostHog. So very similar PostHog, where you have this event, and this is your default PostHog script. And the beauty is that you can use this same method to send just about anything into PostHog. So let me show you what that looks like in our Tag Manager. Once you have that script initialized, all you have to do is do posthog.capture and then the name of the event with the properties that are associated. Here we're using the foresight system that we talk about a lot, where you have the kind of intentionality of the site with the actual information on the site. Very, very straightforward. We're right now talking only about browser capabilities. Once you have the actual back end of your system sending leads and everything else, that is where you start to see PostHog really shine over Google Analytics, because in PostHog, you can send the email address as the unifier for any events you want downstream. So you could send via an API request and a webhook to PostHog. All you have to do is authenticate, and you can send, hey, this event occurred with this email address, and it will unify that together inside of PostHog. So now we've spoken about data ingestion, let's talk about exporting data. There are three main integrations that you can have inside of Google Analytics. They're under here under product links. Again, there's a lot of other ones, but most of them aren't that helpful. Is you have the Google Ads link and the Search Console link and the BigQuery link. Those are the three main ones. What you'll notice here is they're all Google products, right? So you can link Google Analytics to all of these different tools. BigQuery is how you export your data out of Google Analytics. So now inside of PostHog, we can talk about how do you export data and what does it integrate with here. So this is where PostHog also shines, because it is not a Google product. It integrates with other things. So PostHog, we currently have our PostHog set up here is for Vision Labs. We are exporting sessions, personas, and events into BigQuery. You can also export to Slack if someone meets a different cohort or a user signs up. You can send to Zapier. You can have customers.io be the CDP. You can go to HubSpot to update triggers and events. You can integrate this tool like a CDP into all of these other tools, and you can do whatever your heart desires, because almost anything is exportable. You can get events, personas, triggers, flags, feature flags, you name it, you can get it outside of PostHog to do something about it. You can even have events sent to Mixpanel, which some might view as a competitor to PostHog. Same thing with Pixels, and all of these different things you can utilize to send data to. If you are a company that wants to use Redshift or Postgres or Snowflake, any of these different things, you can utilize them within PostHog. It makes it extremely easy to get data out as well as in. Now we're going to speak about comparison number 3, reporting. Let's talk about Google Analytics first. So Google Analytics has these two different styles of reports. You have reports here, which is like your acquisition, and you can hop into these different types of reports where you can build them and customize them by using this little customized report up here. And then this is what you have for your kind of default reporting. Then you also have is your explore reports. These are more sniper-based questions where you can build something where you have a funnel or you have a path exploration. These have a lot of different problems in the sense of it's really hard to share, it's really hard to utilize these in the context of a bigger dashboard, but they are straightforward. They use the same underlying infrastructure as GA4, and you can kind of customize them within a degree, and then you have these little tabs up here where you can add in more things, but it's, again, really hard to share within an organization because also you're looking at this and maybe you have all this closed out. How do you adjust the date range? It becomes more complicated, right? We're like, where's the date range of this? Is this January? Is this last week? I don't know. So those are the two types of reporting outside of exporting data to BigQuery and then creating Looker Studio reports from that, or using the native integration to Google Analytics to use Looker Studio reporting. But that wouldn't be the comparison here. I will say the default reports here are very nice. They are getting better over time, where you can have all these different things. They make some of these more clickable, where you have user, source, and medium, and you can customize them. And maybe you want to have something more specific. Again, we don't customize ours that much because we want to always see the defaults that Google gives us. But you can really customize this, where you will say, hey, I want to open this, I want to edit this, I want to change the breakdowns, I want to add a new card. You get the idea. Now let's compare that to PostHog. So PostHog has a very kind of similar structure, but different in execution. We have these different concepts called dashboards and then insights. They're called dashboards and insights, whereas in Google Analytics, they are called reports and explorations. So here inside of our dashboards, we can hop in this one that's called lead generation. What you will see is a combination of different insights that are grouped together. Think of this how Google Analytics has your exploration reports, but these are grouped together into reports, right? So here we have total sessions, total form submissions, and then we can kind of see this here along with the most popular landing pages for this time period. And you're like, hey, what's this time period? Here we go. And we are only looking at the source of email, right? So we have all of these little filters at our fingertips. Really nice. The thing that people, I think, really want a lot of times is you usually have default reports, right? You have reports that you're looking at that are pretty, that answer your questions that you're asking on a very consistent basis. And then you have sniper questions. These are the questions where you go deep, you go hard, and you try to answer a very specific question. So let me show you here. If we go inside of our product analytics tab and we go to this one right here. I created this a few seconds ago. I'm going to hit edit on this insight. What we've got here is we have the first step, which is literally a content viewed event. I'll just type this in so you can see. So content viewed, this fires on all of our blog pages, right? So every type of blog or custom post type that is not a home page, that is not a sales page, that is not a contact page, it is content. That is the first step. Then, second step, I want to say people that viewed the homepage, for example. Let's go in here, and so what we can do is we can say where the current URL in their journey is equal to visionlabs.com. We could also add others where it say, hey, where it contains this, where it equals this, or you can use regex, and you could say, hey, where regex is / and then contains something else. So that is our second step, and you can always look here and see the top ones. I think it does the top 10 here, so you usually can see exactly what you're looking for. And then I want to say look at a custom event that we have that's called lead impression, which fires on only lead magnet pages. So you go from our content to our homepage and then to a lead magnet, and you see the lead magnet. And here's that funnel, folks. You can see here we had 1,300 people view our content. We had 101 of them make it to the homepage, and then we had 24 of them make it to the actual lead magnet. So what we could say is our homepage is really good. 74% of people that make it to the homepage from our content, they go to a lead magnet. So should we focus on trying to get these people to the homepage? Should we skip this? And you're like, hey, maybe we should try to skip this. Well, we can do this we can change our step order to any order. And then we can say, cool, in a non-sequential path, meaning that they skipped steps, they went around, they went back, here is what that looks like a little bit better as far as the action. And then lastly, you can add these breakdowns, which are really cool because we have this structure inside of Vision Labs is where we say, hey, what is the difference between these two? And you ask these by questions of where do they come from? And so now you can see this breakdown. I personally like this from top to bottom. So it can show you here's what happened. And then here you can see all of these different ones. I'm gonna hit save on this and then go back to the insight. Let me go here. So here's what the actual insight looks like. So you can see Google out here bringing in 605 total sessions. And then we have 190 of them completed step 2. And then we had 90 of them, or 19 of them converted. We could look that in here at ChatGPT of all of them dropped off, right? So all of these different ways that you can see. And then it also highlights kind of outliers, which is really nice. Okay, there we go. Now let's talk about updates. Google, a few months ago, updated how session cookies are stored. Really complicated. It's really irritating. It really messed up a lot of people's implementations because of how they were doing things. Google didn't even talk about it until basically the day of or day after that it did it. PostHog, on the other hand, is always posting updates. You'll see, hey, here's a quick little update. We now have a new CDP destination for Google Tag Manager in an experimental state. This helps you load Google Tag Manager within your website and integrate more closely with it. Really nice. Stripe webhook now updated. Max AI can now create surveys for you, etc., etc., right? You can now see how they're just flowing in their updates. If you look at Google Analytics' release notes, you'll see that they don't really update it that often, and it's always breaking something. Whenever they update something, it always changes. Again, Google is great. They're a big company, but sometimes they do drop the ball on letting people know, especially active members of their community, about what has happened. The same thing goes for debugging. Their documentation is difficult to manage. You don't really know where it's going. You have to manage, for example, when you have server-side tagging and you want to send something via measurement protocol from Stripe to that, how do you do that? It's not well documented. Inside of PostHog, on the other hand, there is a lot of documentation to let you know how you're going to do these things, and it gives you a lot of options on different methods to get the same outcome. You could send it from your database. You could send it from your actual Stripe webhook. There's so many different methods to do the things that you want to do. So now, here we are, step 5, the cost of the comparison. How do we want to compare costs? This is a little bit more complicated because Google Analytics is just a web tool that is free until you hit GA360, which usually the limitation is 1 million events exported to BigQuery per day. So here's the comparison, is that PostHog pricing is right here on our site. You can go to visionlabs.com/calculator to view all of our calculators. But let's just say, for example, you were doing 30 million a month. Wow. You're doing 30 million events per month. That'd be 1 million events per day. You'd be at almost $1,000 a month. That'd be in the free tier of Google Analytics if you wanted to use Google Analytics. But if you were on 360 and you wanted to have that, so here we go. If we do 30 million, right, you would be at least $4,200 per month if you're on 360. Again, this is not an apples to apples comparison because there's so many features that exist inside PostHog and Google Analytics that are not parity. PostHog does pretty much everything Google Analytics can do, if not more. So you get a generous free tier in Google Analytics. You also get that generous free tier in PostHog of 1 million events per month. If you're going to go to 30 million events per month, you'll be at about $938, but you can pare down events to be just the core events that you want to use. Other things are also factored in. So for example, session replays. Say you wanted to have 20,000 session replays. That would cost you $67 per month. You can add these together, right? You can add all these feature flags. You can do error tracking. You can have warehouse rows synced. All these different things add on cost to PostHog. Unless you are an enterprise, most people are within the $50 to $500 per month. Once you start getting into a higher volume, you might end up with more events, but you are paying per event, which is not a terrible thing to do. Lastly, let's talk about customization. Here is something where PostHog really does shine. Inside of PostHog, you can write SQL just about anywhere. I'm going to hop directly to the SQL editor, and you'll see here that you can visualize just about anything. I'm going to try and do something very simple here. We can look at one of these views of looking at daily conversions by day. Let me see if I can copy and paste this in here. All right, so for example, you want to do a very simple query. You can select today from the timestamp, count from events where timestamp is greater than now, and interval of 7 days, group by timestamp, group by day ascending. You can then say, hey, I want to visualize this as a day. I want to make variables. I want to add in variables. I want to materialize this view and save the view. It's all built in here inside of PostHog. It also uses ClickHouse native functions, so you can write any queries you'd like in ClickHouse, which honestly, it's pretty quick because you can do a lot of these things, and Max, which is their AI support, is very helpful. You are able to really go quickly inside of PostHog because their AI knows everything about what your data schema looks like, as well as you can use ClickHouse native functions. So if you want to Google ClickHouse functions to do things, there's a lot of people who've written a lot about ClickHouse. Alternatively, in Google Analytics, there's not a lot of customizations you can do. You are stuck with what you get in the UI unless you go into BigQuery. Not the end of the world, just it's not that easy to unnest and do things inside of BigQuery that you would do inside of PostHog. These are all edge cases that we find ourselves in all the time because we work with companies that are trying to push their analytics function to the highest degree to get the most juice and revenue out of their data as possible. So if you are in general trying to get customizations, like you want to know a very unique function or you want to have something clean up historical data, you have to do that inside of BigQuery, which is an integration with Google Analytics, or you can do that inside of PostHog natively. The alternative with PostHog is that you could also do it inside of their BigQuery, because you can have data flow from PostHog into BigQuery. It is really, really helpful. It is extremely easy to debug and create queries inside of PostHog, and their AI Max is by far one of the best query builders I've seen. So there you go, folks. There's the main comparison between Google Analytics and PostHog. I know there are a lot of nuances. I'm going to be diving into each and every one of them as best I can to show you the comparisons, how to use PostHog, and what you might be trying to get out of it from a marketing and product perspective when your marketing team and your product developers are both asking questions of you.